Patriarchy podcast. So glad you're here.
Hi, everybody. It's Krista and Lindsey. Thanks for joining us on this just gorgeous day.
It's a gorgeous day
On
wherever
Earth.
you are.
On Earth.
Wherever you are, we're sure it's a gorgeous day. We're sporting opposite seasons in our video.
Man.
I'm a sweatshirt. You're a tank top today.
I'm in a freaking tank top. I was
She's
like,
a
I want to start
Tank-
spring vibes.
Yes, you want to start tanking.
I want to start tanking. I got, I go through these phases where I want to like kind of be in a uniform all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I ordered a bunch of like very cozy t-shirts and tank tops from Everlane, and I'm just wearing the same thing every day.
I know. I was going to buy some after I was trying yours on. It looks amazing.
It's so comfy.
Because yeah. Oh my God, you guys. So Lindsey and I did this casting yesterday.
My past life came to my current life, and it was, wow.
Dude, I don't know how you did it.
So we were approached to audition for this national commercial for a brand. And we've never, I've done a bunch of castings before. You've done
we
a couple.
We did one other one with the toothpaste brand.
Oh,
2 years
ago. LOL. But it's super aligned because we love the brand. So I was like, oh, let's just do it and see what's up. And I just forgot how, like, thank God I don't give a shit anymore when I'm in those types of situations and rooms. But man, oh man, I forgot that feeling of just not being seen.
I don't know how you did it for so long. Actors and actresses, bless you. I don't know how.
So we did it separately. What was your experience?
I was going to puke. Before we started, first of all, I forgot it. I forgot it was scheduled. So I just got done with my workout. And
Same.
And Haley, our manager, is like, hey, just so you know, they're probably going to look in your kitchen. I look over at my kitchen. It's fucking a dump. And I am like, holy hell.
Do you guys like powders and supplements on the counter?
And there was actually, we just got sent a package. There was like 50 boxes of powders and supplements, stuff all over the counter, all this stuff. And I'm like, perfect, because my kitchen is a dump. And we get on and I'm just like, oh my God. They're like, so tell us whatever. And what I don't like about casting in the 2 times that I've done it is that they are like, are you available? And it's like almost like they packages it up as if they were going to choose you when they don't. Like they should just be like, hi, like tell us about this. Thanks so much. Instead of being like, are you available? Does this rate work for you? Like it's like the whole situation makes you feel like it could be a potential when it's like they should not lead you on.
Well, I think they just ask that because
just why?
They need to know that they want to confirm that you're available, because if they cast you, then they don't want to have to go back and recast or have to whatever. But I totally agree. It does get your hopes up. I mean,
Not that my hopes were down.
That was literally every audition I would go to. I'm like, I got it.
Ew, it was just weird. Like it was just, I didn't like that vibe where they're like, tell us why you blah, blah, blah. Oh my God. And oh my God, it was just gross. I felt disgusting. I was like, I also at the end, I'm like, you know what? I have 2 really good friends that would be perfect for this. I can connect you with them.
Literally.
I literally was like,
I know
can connect
exactly
you
who.
Exactly. You know exactly who. I was like, I have 2 amazing friends that would actually rock this role. And they were like, thanks. I'm like, okay, bye. And I just got done with the workout. I looked like shit. I just didn't like it.
I actually I was jazzed because I no longer felt so attached to that world and that process. And
how could you do that multiple times a day?
I felt, it just felt good to not care about that stuff and be in a position where I get to create with you every day instead of waiting for the permission to go and be expressive. So for me, it was like, there you are. That's why you're not in this world any longer in that capacity, like trying to be cast. How did I do it every day? I don't know. That's just what I thought it was. That's what I thought my world would be.
Dude.
You just kind of accept that. And I wasn't, awake enough to be like, this doesn't feel good. My soul doesn't like this.
Totally.
I was like, rejection feels
natural.
Good.
And I'm the person, like, if I feel people are making me prove myself to them, I'm running 500 feet the other way. Yeah. I do not care. I do not engage with people like that. So to be in that situation where I'm stuck with people that I'm essentially proving myself to, that I don't care about, I'm like, dude, bye.
Well, Thank goodness it wasn't one where you had to. So I've been in many, many, many castings where they're like, okay, we're going to go close up on your nose. Okay, side, front, side. Can you show us your hands, the backs of your hand, like literally parts of your body, like close up so they can see? Granted, I would never like truly care. I'm like, okay, this is just a part of the process. But like, it makes you hyper aware of how you look.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Whoa.
So anyway.
Not my vibe.
Yeah, I don't think we were cast, everybody.
Honestly, guys, I don't think we got the gig. I don't think we, and also I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I don't need this money. You know.
Well, let me just also say, I mean, the rate at which they're paying for national commercials now is not good.
I don't even know.
Well, yeah. There's
The
a whole
rate that
thing
it-
with unions and non-unions, and it's mainly non-union work, which is kind of like fucking the unions. And I'm not in the world anymore to know the details, but it's not good.
Yeah, I was thinking for the pay, I was like, this isn't worth it.
No.
And for me to be all over your advertisements for a year
Nationally.
nationally.
No.
That's not my jam.
I know.
People aren't going to be like, hey, I found you from this ad and I'm now newly a fan of your work. I saw your work picking up this box and I've been inspired for years. Oh my gosh, you guys.
Shoot, man.
Well, freaking bless.
New day every day here at Almost
New day
30.
every day. New thing we failed. Just kidding. We don't fail at stuff, but that was interesting. Today's episode, literally, you guys.
We've been waiting to do this one for a while, ever since, you're solo
long.
and yeah, people were so impacted by your experience in healing the mother wound. And so to bring in Bethany Webster as the expert.
Bethany is incredible. So she wrote the book Discovering the Inner Mother. And I actually found this book after, I actually don't know if their team sent it to us after I did the episode.
Possibly.
But I didn't seek it out. So I think that their team maybe heard that we were talking about it and then sent the book. And the book is unreal. The book is so, so good. It has a lot of her personal story. And then it all makes sense. It makes your whole life make sense. And what's so beautiful about this interview is, we do a lot of interviews all the time, but this one was one where the information that she shared, I haven't felt so blown away in so long.
Yeah. We had a moment where we were like, what?
My life will never be the same.
Yeah, time stopped. It was very
You know
cool.
how in life there's like lingering questions you have your whole life? I've had lingering questions about situations that I've gone through in my life. And she literally answered one of my greatest lingering questions. And that is about why being friends with two women at the same time, where you're like in a throuple, never works. And I've literally gone through so many of those relationships with women where it's 3, and literally since in the past 10 years or whatever, I'm like, nope, 3 doesn't work. And so we talked about the triangulation of female relationships. And the mother wound as a whole leads so much into our relationships with women, our relationships with our own self-worth, our relationships with the world, with food, eating, diet. It really is like the basic foundation for all parts of our life. In the second trimester, when we are in the womb, basically we are absorbing all of the feelings, emotions, DNA of the mother. So it's really so important that we look at the trauma and experiences that we had in childhood that really shape us in our lives today. And a lot of those happen with our relationship with our mom.
Yes. And just how, how different that shows up for each individual person. Because I feel like your experience is different than mine. And even talking to Bethany and hearing about her relationship with her mother, but just that commonality of how impactful that relationship and that dynamic can be in your overall development and how you are in relationships today, whether with another or with yourself. It's just so powerful. And, men experience this too with the mother wound, but I think the connection between the mother and daughter is one that is just incredibly formative.
I'm excited too if there's a father wound that we can do, but I just think this is so beautiful, and this is a conversation for all women. And I think the healing of this is really profound. And when I've really done this work and done this healing, it's really changed a lot of my life and a lot of areas within my life. And it's even impacted my own mom. You know, when I did the mother wound episode, which a lot of you guys have listened to, my mom actually listened to that as well. We haven't talked about it, or like, you know, no words have been said to each other about it, but like, you know, we know this is happening on each other's sides of the world. So that would be too much if we actually came together, but progress is being made very slowly. And in healing the mother wounds, one of the most beautiful sentences and parts, which I think really summarizes the power of healing the mother wound really well, and the importance of this episode, is healing the mother wound is the next frontier of feminism, as it functions as the linchpin for our most insidious forms of self-limitation, the very subtle and invisible ways we hold ourselves back in order to secure love, safety, and belonging. These insidious self-limiting patterns have been passed down from mother to daughter for centuries. The time to stop the cycle is now. So when we're making ourselves small, when we're making, putting others on a pedestal, when we're feeling unsafe, when we're feeling unloved, when we're feeling unworthy, when we're feeling like we need to restrict, all these different things really come from that mother relationship.
Yeah, so powerful. So the book is Discovering the Inner Mother. You can get it anywhere books are sold. If you're on YouTube, Chris is holding it up right now. Bethany, yeah, so powerful. And I loved how passionate Bethany is. Like,
she's incredible.
You literally feel her spirit and everything that she's thinking in real time. And she's like, she's so present. And I love that, because that's not always the case.
Pop off.
Yeah.
You guys mark our
Careful.
words. Mother wound is going to be the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to have Bethany do a workshop in our membership.
Yes.
Next month. So, or the next couple months. So we're going to have little
So
mother wound
exciting.
workshop for our members. So FYI on that. Okay. So please share this episode with any friends that you think would resonate. Anyone that you feel like has had a journey with their mom or their relationship with their mother. This is a really good episode to help them start their healing or continue their healing.
And if you guys haven't listened to Krista's solo about healing the mother wound, I would definitely recommend listening to that. And let's take a moment and wish Krista Williams a happy birthday. Today is her birthday, the day that this episode comes out. And yeah, I hope you know how loved you are, and how, just how much you've impacted everyone in this community with, she's nodding, but it's really true. You know, with every,
what am I supposed to do? Be like, I know.
I just hope you feel that. I know that like we are doing so much, and running a business together can be just so much, but I think you put your heart into everything that we do. And I just want to celebrate you in any way that we can. So if you see Krista walking on the street, if you can DM her, just celebrate her in any way. Let's do that. So happy birthday. I love you.
Thanks. I love you. And I, chose to have this episode released on this day just because this topic has felt so important to me, and this conversation has felt so important to me and our community. So this was like a very, thoughtful decision to have this mother wound episode go out today. So I'm really, really excited to share this with you guys. And thank you for being a part of our community. Thank you for making Almost 30 what it is, and for sharing with your friends, and for sharing on social. It means so much. And if you're inclined, you can check out almost30.com. We have all of our courses and programs on there. So if you're interested in any of the topics that we talk about on Almost 30, that's a great place to start. And if you want to start a podcast, if this is your year to start a podcast, you can also get our Podcast Pro program, which is at almost30.com.
Thank you all for listening. Make sure you've subscribed so our episodes every Tuesday and Thursday are in your inbox. And enjoy this one. We'll see you on the other side.
We'll see you soon.
But yeah, this work has been really powerful. And I think, Krista and I have experienced it in different ways. But what's really interesting is that we are in a community of women, and, as beautiful it has been, it's also like brought up a lot of this work, and just like kind of shown it to us pretty directly. What initially like interested you in the mother wound and the inner mother work based on your own experience?
Yeah, it just organically happened. I had this kind of like ambivalent relationship with my own mother that I avoided forever. But when I got to college, I had all these terrible symptoms that forced me to go into therapy. And then I spent a lot of time avoiding in like the spiritual realm, like meditation. And I kind of thought that if I just was spiritual enough, then I wouldn't have to deal, with my family stuff. But the more I went on and on, I just saw like kind of like what you just described. I just kind of saw that this was impacting every area of my life. The beliefs that were holding me back were showing up like with my career, with relationships, with my how I felt about my body, about food. Like it was just touching everything. And as I started to kind of witness how I acted around my mother as well, I started to see, oh my gosh, this is really the core of everything. So I started to finally focus on it. And I did that for many years. And then I kind of hit like that culminating moment when I had to confront my mother about the relationship, because I was healing in therapy and doing my own inner work. So I was becoming stronger and more like empowered. So I wanted that relationship to also be empowered as well. And I knew it was going to blow everything up on some level, but I was like, I have to do this for myself, for my own integrity. This is the person I want to be. I want to speak truth. I want to be honest. I want to be vulnerable, but I also want to grow. And I don't want to stay inside of relationships that are keeping me down and ones that I have to stay silent to be loved. So that whole thing blew up my relationship with my mother. And the book talks about how I had to, it got really bad. But through that process, I lived through the worst. Like my worst fears were actually manifested, but because I had so much support, I was able to like survive it. And then I was having all these realizations, like, no one's talking about this. This is like the nugget. This is like the piece of the puzzle that no one's talking about. And I was looking for more people. This was like around 2013-ish. I was looking for more people who were talking about it. And I just wasn't finding anything that quite hit it right. So I was so excited to connect with other women. So I just started blogging. And I was terrified, honestly, of like hate mail and people saying, oh, you're hating on mothers, you're blaming mothers. I knew that was going to happen, but I just didn't care. I was just like, this has to be talked about. And I definitely did. It's kind of like every time I've faced my fears about it, it's just like, I'm realizing everything is survivable, and It just makes you stronger and makes you like everything more possible in a way.
Yeah, I love your story. And I loved at the beginning so it's like the beginning of each chapter is like more of your story, which was really beautiful. And I know you have a partner, and it's funny, I kind of like skipped to the end. I'm like, when does she meet her partner? Because at first you were with your husband. I'm like, I kind of was like, I need to hear the partner story. But one of the parts that I found really beautiful is I have notes all in my book, but in the conclusion, I feel like it's a really just a good summation of the mother wound and the work. Healing the mother wound is the next frontier of feminism, as it functions as the linchpin of our most insidious forms of self-limitation, the very subtle and invisible ways we hold ourselves back in order to secure love, safety, and belonging. These insidious self-limiting patterns have been passed down from mother to daughter for centuries. The time to stop the cycle is now. And I can't even believe it, because so much of what we're seeing, and I think a lot of our mother wounding has come up in Lindsey and I's relationships. My fear of trusting women, and I think for Lindsey, hers shows up in other ways. And so when we're working on our female friendships, it's also such a mother wound issue. So can you talk a little bit about how the mother wound really affects and impacts the various parts of women's lives and how that shows up?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so exciting when we can see, like, I think the nugget is learning how each of us has a certain kind of blueprint for relationships that we got with our mothers, right? And it's a little different for everyone based on what those dynamics were like. So it's a little bit like having this curiosity, like making the link between what are my current issues now? Like, what are the most biggest challenges I have, and then doing a little reflection on how does that relate back to what I learned in my early environment. Making that link and getting into the habit of doing that has been one of the most exciting things that I do in my own personal growth and what I teach other women as well, because when we can make that link, we can then kind of rework it. It's like we have to become aware of what we went through back then, how it's showing up now. But this is counterintuitive for a lot of people. A lot of people, and especially in our culture, they're like, I don't want to look back. I don't want to focus on the past. We're taught that to actually look back is to be stuck. But actually the opposite is true. And this is one of my missions in life, is to help people realize that in order to heal, we need to be triggered, right? As my therapist has said, we need to have a live wire to be rewired. We can't just heal in our heads. We actually have to feel it to heal it. So whenever we feel ourselves stuck, whether it's in our careers, our relationships, female friendships is a big one, like you said, and something feels like triggered, like, oh my gosh, this is so intense, I feel overwhelmed. That's a sign that something from the past is getting triggered. And not only is it getting triggered, it's ready to be reworked, right? It means you're feeling it enough that it has the potential for change and to be shifted. So I like to tell people that triggers are opportunities. Triggers are kind of a reason to celebrate, like you're ready to go to the next level. That's why this is coming up. But back to the dynamic, it's really, the mother is about self, right? So it's one of the most unique, significant relationships of our lives, because we were bonded with our mothers. We were actually one being when we came into the planet. First days and weeks and months of our lives, we're literally merged with this person. We don't have the ability to see ourselves as separate, right? So we literally like absorb her feelings, even the inarticulated things, we feel them. So it's deep, right? It's deep into the fabric of how we see the world, how we see ourselves. So it's about self. And that's why I say it's like the linchpin, right? Because if we can get clarity on this, then the transformation starts to spread automatically as a result into all the different branches of our lives. So common ways that it shows up are usually about, and I think I talk about this in the book, but the key thing is really safety, right? Like for the child in us, and we all have like a child part that is at kind of stuck at a development level of whatever we didn't get met or needed, like our emotional needs, whatever, I call it the mother gap, whatever that was, there's a part of us that's looking for that. We're just built this way, right? It's not like there's anything wrong with having a mother gap. It's just the way humans are built. We project what we need, right? So a lot of us, for relationships, for example, will attract similar patterns with our romantic partners that we had with our mothers. And the reason we do this, I think, is to really repair. We have another chance to rework those early patterns. So feelings like not feeling worthy, not feeling safe. Like for many women, we weren't taught that we could be direct and articulate about our feelings. So there might be this like learned pattern of manipulation to get what we need, pleasing behaviors, being too self-sufficient, controlling, and also things like addictions and, addictions or food stuff also, because it's about nourishing the self. So, and they always relate to some kind of hunger, I think, for being. Like all of us as women want to be whole. We want to be our full selves. We don't want to fragment and split the way that, our families or the culture have taught us. So our hunger for self will always manifest in some way. And that's part of our deeper wisdom, wanting to kind of self-correct. So for example, issues with food, like for me, I struggled with food for a long time, and it was, I wanted some kind of nurturing that I couldn't find, in my environment, but food was always there. It was like always available. And it was all, in the way that I didn't even know how to meet my own emotional needs and be that kind of loving source for myself. So food was a way that I worked towards getting that awareness of what am I really wanting? What am I really needing right now? There was a hunger for something that wasn't in my life. So I think it's like, the self and what we experience, whatever's most painful, is that link into, okay, what's the deeper thing that's going on? And I experienced some frustration with this for a long time in the personal development world, because everyone for so long. I think we're going deeper now, but there was this like surface level, like manifest what you want and, or meditate more. But it's like the real work that helps us shift things in a really deep level is we have to go back to look at this original blueprint, because we just play out what we were conditioned to do. It's just, we can't help it. It's what we were raised inside of. It's what we learned how to be safe in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But the great news is that we can rework that.
Completely. Yeah, our good friend Lindsey Phillips does manifestation work, but the basis of that is that subconscious reprogramming, especially around, our experience as a child and with our parents. So it's just so powerful. And we've seen it in our own lives. I'm curious, like the connection, you were describing the first, however many months with your mother, and really taking on whether it's like feelings during pregnancy, et cetera. And I really feel like that happened to me. 'Cause I'm curious, like the different types, the different ways a mother wound can show up. So there is the gap of like a mother maybe not showing up, and that's just a generalization. I'm sure there are variations on that. But then for me, there was kind of this enmeshment with my mother where I really felt everything she felt. And I felt like I was here to help her and heal her. And I felt, just kind of guilty. I would, not fully express myself because I felt like it was, too much and might make things more complicated or heavy. So I'm just curious, like the different variations of how it can manifest.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big one, witnessing our mother's pain and feeling like we have to heal, solve, fix things for her. Especially if, and it's part of the thing is mothers and the way motherhood is set up in our culture, it's like this impossible thing, right? Impossible standards, and the way, not enough support. Mm-hmm. So we watch our mothers struggle. So some mothers will put more weight on their children without even realizing it. And some moms just are more neglectful. Like, it's not like they're putting weight on their kids. They're just literally checked out or not available for whatever reason. So for some people, it's not that parentification where the child is like the emotional parent. It's more like the mother's just not there. And so there's a whole other wound around that, like, feeling like you don't exist, feeling like you don't matter, feeling like there's something wrong with you. Because when we're children, we can't make that cognitive distinction, right? It's like if the person that I need to survive isn't paying attention to me or is dismissing me or, humiliating me or withdrawing from me, there's got to be something wrong with me. Children will always blame themselves rather than blame the parent, because it would be too devastating for our little minds to take in that the parent actually is unsafe. Then it would be just unbearable. So it makes it more bearable to the child to blame herself. So if I had to say, what is the basic manifestation of the mother wound, no matter how it shows up, whether it's neglect or invasion, or it usually comes down to some kind of abandonment and some kind of feeling like I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable. It's some version usually of that. If I had to boil it down, it's just like feeling like I can't be my true self. I'm bad. And a lot of us have this in the background of our consciousness, even though we might, like in my example, I was a complete overachiever and put together. And, but inside there was always this nagging feeling like there's something wrong with me. I think like there's something horrible about me. Had no reason for it, but it's just this awful kind of collapsed grief and pain that I couldn't explain. But the deeper I went, I got to see kind of more of the root. Like, this is really where it came from. It's not really about me. It's really just this pain that has gotten passed down. And it's just my portion of it.
Yeah, I think for me, one of those was, this is like a recent realization, but that if I'm attractive or if I'm beautiful, that it makes others feel bad. Like I always felt like the way that I looked made my mom feel bad about herself. And so I always have seen, like, if people look at me and I think that they think I'm attractive, whatever that is, that I didn't like it, and it made me feel uncomfortable, and it made me feel sad sometimes, honestly, rather than feeling empowered by it. And there's also, you know, within my family, the body image thing actually really rings true. And for most of my life, you know, my mom has felt like food was a threat to her. So a lot of the body conversation and the fear of food really was like very prevalent in our family. And it was a lot of mother wound work, but then also Janine Roth. I don't know if you know her.
Yep.
But she's amazing. Women, Food, and God was really powerful. And I feel like the nourishment piece of what you speak about is really prevalent for people. And I actually think that when doing mother wound work, it was helpful for me to start with body and food and that nourishment and then sort of go.
Okay, no worries. You're good.
It was helpful for me to start with body and food and then kind of go deeper to like being neglected, being a bit, you know, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to talk about. And I feel like as women, we sort of are starting to have those conversations. So around the food conversation, what have you seen and sort of what things would people look as symptoms in their life today that could lead them back to understanding that their relationship with their body and food is because of a mother wound issue?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most powerful books that helped me understand this connection back in the day was this book called The Hungry Self by Kim Chernin. It was written in, I think, the 70s or the 80s. But that really helped me make some clicked links there as women in this culture, our hardships around food, they represent kind of this unwinnable struggle where we can't be our full selves.
Yes.
And the body is the battleground where this takes place. It's like a symbolic gesture. It's like I'm struggling and I can't voice it in words, and there's no place for my pain in this culture, but my body, it's like a form of control that we don't have in our lives, but we can control our bodies. And it is about nourishment. So that's why it's linked with mother, right? Like mother was food for us. And when we were little girls, food was also a power play. So food also has to do with power. And I talk a lot about this in the book, like how there's a power dynamic because of the fact that we live in a patriarchy that is all about domination and power over. So it's like this unwinnable struggle where we can't be our full selves, meaning the hunger that's in us, it's a big hunger. It's a hunger for life. It's a hunger to live full on. It's a hunger to nourish the self fully. But we live in a world that says that if we nourish our full selves, we will be abandoned. We will be too fat, we'll be too thin, we'll be, there's so many ways that we are abandoned in the culture, but we're taught that it's about so it's just, I think there's a part about anorexia in that book where she talks about how, in a way, women who, for example, don't want to eat, it's in part kind of a protest against becoming a woman and staying in a child's body. Because to become a full woman with hips and a really robust ass and, boobs and stuff, that means that you're a woman, and that means that you're less than in the world. Wow. So she was kind of saying how women in the anorexia context are kind of starving ourselves. We're becoming prisoners in our own bodies as a form of protest against what happens when we become women. And when we become women, our bodies develop, right? We can't really stop it. So it feels out of control, but it's, that's why adolescence, I think, is such a hard time for us as women, because our bodies are turning us into the lesser than, and we're realizing what we're losing. We're losing our voice. We're losing the fun, the smart, all the things that we naturally are. We have to fit smaller and smaller into a kind of a vice of what womanhood is. And I think that's why food is tough. Even with like the binging and purging, it's like, I want to eat everything. I want to be all of me. I want to nourish like deeply, but then I can't hold it in, because to hold in this nourishment, I'm going to lose something. So I have to I have to get it out. So it's this struggle, right? And it's in a lot of it, like you said, Krista, we see it. Like I saw my mother also struggle with food issues as well. And it's like, when that's what's modeled, there's kind of this panic, like, what does this mean for me? So we often have to go through some things like that and if we get help, we can listen to what's the deeper thing I need right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the nourishment piece is so important. And I was rereading one of Janine Roth's books the other day, and it was like, when you binge, it's actually coming from a place of wanting to nourish yourself and wanting to give yourself comfort, and to kind of reframe it from like, I'm sabotaging myself. I'm doing this to like ruin my life. I'm bad, whatever, and kind of see it as like a beautiful way. Like your body's actually really trying to like provide nourishment and comfort instead of thinking of it negatively.
Yeah. And there's so many ways that we have to have less, like,
yes.
So it's like, it's kind of this reaction to like, I want it all. I don't want to be holding myself back 24/7, 365.
Yes. It's like liberation, it's like,
yeah,
I'm
totally
liberate myself in this moment and sort of do the thing that's bad, like in quotes, do the thing that, and do it in private. And like, I do really relate to that too, where if you're not being your authentic self and if you're acting small all the time, then you're going to find an outlet to sort of express that, or sort of try and move that energy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a pressure valve that needs to be released. And that's one of the things I really love talking about, and kind of reframing, like, all the symptoms that we have, whatever they are, they're not really because anything's wrong with us. Like legit, these things come from a real experiences that we had.
It's like a it regulates. It's like a regulatory mechanism. I don't know if that makes sense, but to me, it's like trying to find balance, because we're either have been deprived, or we're depriving ourselves in some way, or not speaking our truth. And so, universally, there's always just kind of this strive towards balance. And I think our bodies do that really beautifully. But I love that piece, because I think it's so relatable to so many women, and I think we shame ourselves for those moments.
We do. We have nothing to be ashamed of. It's like, I can just put it in the context of myself. Like, I'm realizing more lately, like, all the things that I thought were my personality, like being an overachiever, striving for things, working super hard, actually are not really me. They were actually the ways that I was conditioned to live based on the early environment that I grew up with. And as they shed, like, I'm not an overachiever anymore. Like, these identities are evaporating. And what's so liberating is like, who am I really? Like, it's a discovery as we shed each false, once we see that we don't need them anymore, like, they serve us, right? Like, the overachieving served me big time. Being super organized and served me big time. But then it's like, I don't need that anymore, because I know more of who I am. Like, so it's kind of exciting that, these are just ways that we learn to cope with pain. That's really what it comes down to. When we didn't have the support, when we didn't have the resources, we find ourselves doing things like comparison or competition, or feeling less than. They're all symptoms of a deeper pain that we experienced. And so it's so liberating. That's why I talk about inner mothering. It's like, through that love and safety that we can give ourselves, we don't need those artificial adaptations anymore. We can actually start to feel safe as the true self, discover who she is.
In the book, you talk about the patriarchal bind. And I would love to just explain what that is, and just how we can identify it. So we talked about like those family systems, but now like within society as well. I just feel like, there's so many conversations on whether it's the patriarchy, or just kind of conversations around like separation. And so I kind of want to dig into it and see how we can like not reframe, but begin to, just establish like our own, like kind of take back the power in a way, but not in like a righteous way. It's just like, it's always been ours. So I'm just kind of wanting to unwrap that, because when I hear patriarchy, I'm like, okay, yes, I believe that there is a patriarchy, but I also don't want to be like against it's not like my energy is not like, let's tear down the patriarchy. It's like, what is patriarchy?
Yes.
And how can we as women
does that mean like victimhood to you when you hear patriarchy? Does it feel like it's like, oh, I'm a victim and I don't believe I'm a victim? Like, I'm just curious.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
For me, that does.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just feels old to me. It's just like, okay, let's all pull ourselves out of this and reestablish the systems that we want to see in the world, I guess, is sort of what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can relate to that. The way I see it is like patriarchy is this broadly speaking idea that women are less than, and it lives inside of us. So the book is really about how I see it is like dismantling patriarchy from within ourselves. Because we can't just create a new world. Like, you just can't when we have centuries of conditioning that is flowing through our veins. We actually have to, and this might feel counterintuitive, but we actually have to look at how we have been victimized in order to get the power back. Like, we can't skim over that like, oh yeah, that's old news. Like, we actually are programmed to like re-victimize ourselves and not even know it.
And be a part of it. What I'm hearing you say too is like, because I'm thinking like, patriarchy's over there and I'm here, like we have,
right.
It is inside of us. It's a really interesting concept that I'm now
when you explain it that way, I'm like, yeah, that's true, because we see it every day with women, where it's like women will take down other women in a second, but then we live in this structure where there's like these companies and like systems that are doing terrible, horrible things, but we're not really like paying as much attention.
Right, exactly. And it's such a key thing to get, and it is tough to get, because it's like, oh, I don't want to feel like a victim. Like, I have felt that so much in my life. But it's true. Like, when we can see it though, then we own it and it doesn't own us anymore. Right. So yeah, the patriarchal bind is really about how, as women, we basically kind of have two choices, but it's like a lose-lose. It's like, we're taught that we can either be loved or be powerful. So if you want to be powerful, you might be abandoned. So if you speak your mind and you're like, some women go the other way and they're not pleasing. They're more like rebels or pushing. But in either way, we're kind of not being our true self, whatever that looks like. So in our families and in our culture, to some degree, there's this feeling like I can't be both powerful and be loved. In order to be loved, I have to be what other people want me to be, to some degree. And either way we lose. It's like for example, and I can talk from my own experience, that when I was kind of a good girl, that's kind of how I was conditioned to be. I got approval. People loved me, but I lost myself. I had to kind of self-mutilate in a way. I had to reject parts of myself. I had to shame myself to be what the world and my family wanted me to be. But the other piece of the puzzle is, if you have the courage, some of us do, and like actually another part of my life, I was afraid if I become my true self, my family will abandon me. That actually happened. I got healthy enough to where I could speak my truth, but they weren't ready to build with me from that place. So I lost my entire family. This is not everyone's story. This is kind of an extreme example, but there's a lot of women who are estranged from their families. So the patriarchal bind in my life has played out. Like, but I chose myself. So for many women who feel this, like, can I be myself or can I be loved? Can I have both? I think that's like the question that all of us are kind of asking in a way, especially in a pandemic where a lot of us are pushed to the brink right now without a lot of support and feeling really limited and constrained. And a lot of these issues are up in the front of us right now in our faces. So like what you're saying, Lindsey, I think is how to break out of that and like claim our power is to do exactly that. Like start to build that support with other women and get support from women who are doing it to be the true, like affirm, I am lovable as my true self. Even when people let me down, disappoint me, discard me when I have boundaries, you know, I am still here for myself. I'm not going to reject myself when others have rejected me. And I think, and I see this with the women I work with in my course, it's like there is a new culture building of women showing up for women as they dismantle this kind of compulsion to conform in order to be loved.
Yep. I love that.
We have to develop that intolerance for that. Like I will not fragment myself to conform to your pictures of who you want me to be. I define me for myself, and whether you can come with me into as I grow, I'm not going to hang out and wait around for you. I can't. I must live my true self. I must live my true life, whatever the cost, And that is our true safety, is to really get to that place where the integrity inside us is the driving force, not approval, not complicity, not looking a certain way. And that's when we can be truly revolutionary and innovative. And we need more women who are going by these new rules for themselves, right? Like setting their own standards.
Amen.
Fire.
Woo!
Fire. I wish I could have said everything you said so I could take credit for it. It was so powerful. No, honestly, that is the motto. I loved in the book too, where and this is related to that, where you talk about the female empowerment industrial complex and how the authenticity that we're craving is much more radical and subversive to the status quo than what we realize. And that, you know, I think about it as it relates to like what you're talking about right here, the true liberation of a woman, like the true radical authenticity of a woman is so different than what we see online as like the girl boss, like female empowerment quotes online and everything like that. And I think what's hard is that it plays off like it's empowerment or like it is leading us in that direction, but it's really not. And you know, the one that you're talking about, the true honesty and authenticity feels dangerous for me. Like when I think about it, I'm like, oh, that feels a little dangerous. Like it feels a little like the wolf, like Women Who Run with Wolves is a great book about that. But I just want to talk about that a little bit more in sort of like those two areas.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think women want this, even this female female empowerment kind of consumerist capitalist version, right? It's slick, it's still sexy, and that's fine, but it's not changing. It's not really going to where we need to go. It's still, in a way, very much communicating that female power is still, you know, in high heels or whatever. 100%. Like I saw a quote recently that I've been sitting with that has rocked my world a bit. It was something like, and I can't remember who it was, but it was something like what femininity is in the patriarchal context is communicating our willingness to be submissive in this world. And I've been sitting with that like, whoa, you know, because it's like, that's threatening because it's like, what does it mean? Who is the self, the true self of us women? Like, what does our true power look like if it doesn't have those same signals, right? For beauty and for, you know, desirability. And, you know, so I think it is dangerous, but that's what's so exciting about it. Is it's going to like this question. And I don't think we should rush the answer. You know, it's like, what is true female power? What is really a female revolution? We have to live that. We have to live into that question and not rush with the answer of, oh, it's just putting a pink bow on a corporate executive, you know, look. No way. That's like,
that's optics.
yeah,
That's
it's
the
optics.
patriarchy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I always just think, I'm like, how is what this perceived femininity or female empowerment playing into the same structures that we're trying to break? So like, if we're just focused on optics, if we're just focused on the way someone looks, if we're objectifying ourselves, if we're objectifying our sexuality, like, how is that actually still playing into the structure where men have the power, where they're the ones that have to give us money, whether it's selling our bodies or other ways? And I think it's just such an interesting thing that I noodle over often, just kind of thinking about how we can go deeper specifically into the shadowy parts of being in our authentic self.
Yeah. And you know what I would say? I love this question that you're asking. And I think for me, the place to go that's usually the most dangerous, but it always has answers, is going to your own family and what you went through there. Like, there's some shadowy shit. We all have something, stuff from our past that I'd like to say the mother wound is kind of like an invisible fence. It keeps us inside of certain behaviors and away from others without us even realizing it, because it's familiar, it's comfortable, and our systems prefer the familiar. But we are still confined inside of them. So in order to get outside of them, though, we have to look at what's keeping us inside this perimeter. And it usually, the place to look is, what did we learn from our own families? And this is very challenging and tough for people, because it's like, I don't want to look at myself as a victim. I'm beyond that shit now. We can be resilient enough to do this. Like, this is where the gold is. And I know this because I'm someone who resisted it so hard, but going into it is exactly where we don't want to go, is where we got to go. And finding other people who are excited by that challenge too, about being courageous. And like, even sexuality, like, there's another place where we feel this ambivalence, right, about our sexuality. We want to be fully expressed sexually. We want to feel free. We want to have fun. But there's shadowiness around that. And a lot of that shadowiness is stuff that are like, it's like ghosts from our past that shows up in the bedroom, or shows up, in these subtle little feelings that we might not even have named yet. But once we start looking at, like, what did I experience around sexuality? One of the first things I do in my course is start to ask women, how did your mother, what kind of messages did she communicate to you about these main areas? Money, sexuality, her own body, other women. Start to do a little inventory, like, not just overtly, because some mothers didn't talk about any of these things, but she communicated messages, very powerful messages to you about these areas, simply by her behavior, her choices. So that's an easy way that you can start to do a reflection on, what are these confines I'm living inside of that I might not even know? Because once you know a bit more about what you grew up with, and you can start to actually consciously start to go outside of it more. Yeah.
I'm thinking about too, your specific experience with your own family, and not only bringing them into kind of your own realizations and healing, but did you create boundaries that they were uncomfortable with? Or I'm just kind of curious more about that, because I can imagine that there are a lot of people out there who are and will begin to do this work and kind of experience that resistance. A quote from the book that just kind of ties this together is, which I thought was really powerful: what you say no to determines the success of what you say yes to. And I'm kind of working on that with my family, out of like a place of deep love and wanting to connect more deeply to them, is like kind of setting up those boundaries and saying no, or whatever that looks like. So I'd just love to kind of pull back on that your situation in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great question. I love that question about boundaries with family, because as women, we're often taught that boundaries mean rejection. Boundaries mean we're being mean. Boundaries mean we don't care. So it's like, I feel like our generation is really setting up kind of like a new way, right? Where boundaries are not, we're seeing that boundaries and compassion, boundaries and love can coexist. Very much so, and must, right? For healthy relationships. In my family, I was definitely like the family mediator and the family, like I took care of everyone to some degree. That was my story. And then as I got healthier, I wanted to set more boundaries. And like I feared, it didn't go well because I kind of saw that my willingness to not have boundaries was actually the glue that kept my entire family afloat.
Yeah.
And because what happened when I set those boundaries, and it was a process. This isn't something that just like happened, but it was a process where I started to see that the more I was consistent, I held my ground with lots of love. Like I couched all my boundaries inside. Explain my boundaries.
Oh, sorry. Can you repeat? It just went out for
a second when you said couched.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, it was a process. I couched my boundaries in lots of empathic language, but my family members, like my mother, my father, my brother, didn't have the capacity to hear that my boundaries weren't rejection or attack. In their mind, me setting boundaries and kind of modeling a self-worth with respect. And I always did everything with respect because I wanted to be in integrity, number one, and I didn't want to create like another layer of conflict. So I was always doing my best to be respectful and loving. But even the small little steps of boundaries that I was making was interpreted as rejection and attack. My mother in particular saw my boundaries as an attack on her, which I had intuited could happen. And I was afraid of this, but when it happened, it was so painful, but also so affirming, like I was right, and I knew that I could not live inside of this no boundary existence. Like I knew that I literally could not live that way anymore. And I had tried everything, to try to make it work. And it literally, my family just didn't have enough resilience and hadn't done much growth on their own to be able to, it's really sad. They just didn't have the skills. So I like to tell people, it's so important to work on boundaries for your own health and well-being. We can't know at the outset how well our family will adapt. There's a lot of moms out there that actually are willing to do the work. Like they want their relationship with their daughters. They're going to figure it out. They're going to get books. They're motivated, so which is really awesome. So it's so important. It could actually make your relationship with your mom go to like a whole new level of health and growth and like yumminess, but we don't know. So it's like kind of a risk that we have to take.
Yeah.
So it really becomes about support and having a place like Lindsey where you can having some tools in your toolbox and also some people you can talk to that are like got your back and checking in. And because it can be really painful to be met with like any form of backlash. Like
Sure.
The more dysfunctional families are, usually the less individuality they tolerate from their members. So if you're trying to step out of a toxic family dynamic, chances are the family system is gonna have some turbulence. And so support is so crucial.
Yeah. I'm just getting therapy
I got
today.
you, baby. I really loved too the part that, and actually I want to talk about that too, where individuality is seen like as something that's bad to the family. But I really love the section where you talk about when sympathy for your mother makes you feel stuck, and sort of this feeling that we have where one moment we're feeling so empowered and we're like, yes, like rock on, I am my own person, I'm going to set boundaries, all these things. And then the next moment you're feeling really sympathetic and compassionate and sad for their journey. And like, I often feel, I do feel sad. I do feel sad in my own way, that my mother doesn't have access to the healing that I've had access to, doesn't have access to the conversations, the people, the situations that's really brought me to this place where I feel incredibly liberated. So how do we juggle with that? And how much, I guess, do you work with that feeling of being sympathetic for their experience?
Yeah, for sure. What you just said is so common. Like it's definitely something that holds people back. I see it all the time in
Yeah.
with the people I work with, and myself included. Like, you know, because as families, it's like, as families, we feel this sense of shared well-being, and we want people in our family. We're programmed like to be a tribe and to have a family and a group that we love, that we share values with, that we take care of one another. So of course that sympathy is real and it's heartfelt. The key that you want to look out for, though, is when that compassion causes your well-being to degrade. So like, what happens, and usually it's some kind of enmeshment, right? Like I talk about unspoken contracts. Like I didn't realize until I started to set boundaries that my mother actually, in her mind, had this unspoken contract with me that as her daughter, I would never disagree. I would never do things differently. I would always prioritize her well-being over mine because that's what she did for her mother. So when my turn, I was like 27 years old, came, like my Saturn return, it was a big one, was like, okay, I'm going to be an individual. I'm going to work on this. It was, to her, I think she experienced it like such a betrayal. We had never actually even talked about this. It was just like this assumed, unspoken thing. And she experienced it like a betrayal. I was just like, I want to grow and heal. So I think what I'm trying to get to answer your question is really that sometimes when we are growing, we will feel this kind of disconnect between what our values are, like our worldview, and then what our parents' worldview is. And they can actually be quite different. And so it's almost like I said, you can't know at the outset. It's something you kind of have to see and almost witness in yourself. Like when I have sympathy for my mother, that's totally legit and fine. But what am I making that mean about me? Like, does that sympathy also include a host of behaviors? Like I have to be silent. I have to take care of her. I have to check in with her every week. So you want to kind of watch what is your belief about sympathy for your mother inside of that? Are there beliefs that say, well, if I'm a good daughter, then I can't shine too brightly, or I don't want to be too excited about my things because then she's going to feel lonely or less than. Like, where are you emotionally caretaking her? That's not your responsibility. And pro tip, if we do this for our mothers, we're doing it for others in our lives. So whatever we're doing that's not healthy in our relationships with our mothers, it always shows up elsewhere. So that's why it's such a powerful ground for transformation. If we can have these insights and shift these behaviors with our mothers, we can, oh my God, show up so much differently automatically as a result in our other relationships. So, because we're dealing with the blueprint. That's why it's scary. And that's why it's so powerful and so inspiring, because you're dealing with the blueprint. Does that make sense though? It's like, what does sympathy for her mean? And am I afraid of, if I change this or grow out of this, or what does that mean for our relationship? So kind of reflecting on that more.
And I think for me, my sympathy means like when I feel sympathetic, it makes me feel like I don't deserve what I have. You know, it's like, oh, I feel so bad. Do I deserve all of this? Like, do I deserve access to therapy or, you know, meaningful relationships? And that's really my feeling with it. And so I think that's a beautiful way for people to think about it, is like, what is the underlying feeling or subconscious belief when you're feeling sympathetic? And you mentioned other relationships, and you know, this is like the last thing I wanted to talk about was how the mother wound affects female relationships and how it affects, you know, your relationships with people in your life. And I think when I started to really do this work, a lot of things clicked for me as far as it relates to the relationships I had with women. And me and Lindsey have done a lot of beautiful healing work and conversations and therapy on it. So it's been really powerful for me to unlearn a lot of things that I learned. But can you talk a little bit about the relationship between the mother wound and female friendships?
Absolutely. Yeah, our mothers teach us what about female friendships. Like, she's our first model and teacher for what's acceptable, what's possible, what's dangerous in female friendships. So like, I mean, I can give you an example from my own life. Like, I remember I struggled so much. A theme in my life that has been a big time with female friendships is triangulation. So this feeling like if there's 3 women, there's something dangerous. Like, I would just
that's so funny. I'm excited for you to talk about this because I've said this all the time. Everybody, I'm like, 3 doesn't work. I literally, that's been my motto of life. I'm like, 3 never works. If anyone's trying to live with 2 other girls, I'm like, it never works. Okay, tell me more. This is everything. Yeah.
Well, this is something that I've just recently been like diving deepest of the deep into. And actually I had a trigger around it, and it was super revealing because what I realized was, and I went to the deeper place, like, what did this mean for me as a child? What was the original 3 that was dangerous, right? And I can tell you a little bit, like, there's some backstory. Like, I had to dive a little bit into my attachment blueprint, which is more like disorganized attachment, which was my mother. I needed my mother to survive, but she was also dangerous. And this is one of the most hard things a child can deal with, is when the person you need for safety actually is dangerous or sadistic or whatever. That's terrifying. So yeah, and I was like reflecting on, why am I so scared of 3? And especially when it would always come up if we were getting close, like 3 women, like a group of 3 women getting close, my anxiety would just start to rise.
I'm
for no
terrified
reason.
Talking about it. I'm like, is the third person gonna hear?
Yeah, like it was like everything's great, but I got this like I felt punched in the stomach, like something bad is gonna happen. I don't know what. So basically what I found out was the original 3 was actually me as a little girl, my mother, her adult self. So the mother that, makes you dinner and like tells you to go to sleep and to clean your room, like that part of her. But then the other one, the 3rd, was actually my mother's inner child. Oh, wow. who was basically angry and unpredictable and would take shit out on me, like in really cutting ways. So, and that was such a mind-blowing insight, was that I could never be enough. My mother's inner child always was the most special girl. So I don't know if this makes sense, but like when I, as a little girl, when I needed to shine, or I wanted to, be the most special girl, that was threatening to my mother. And because she never got to be the most special girl, she was a parentified daughter herself. So she always had to be an adult. So I suspect what happened was, when I was playful or confident, she would find a way to just create suffering for me. And over again, this gave me this message that I can never be in a 3. I'm never safe. There's always going to be this kind of tyranny that's going to happen, and I'm going to be the loser. I'm going to be the lost, the one on the outside. I'm going to get boxed out. And the boxing out that happened was from way back when I was a little girl, and I could never be the special girl that, all children developmentally need to feel special. And, so it's, in a way, it was like my mother had 2 sides. She was an adult with lots of power, but she was also a tyrant. I mean, a little girl. She was a famished little girl, but she was also a kind of a tyrant adult. And so there was no way for me to actually be safe in that situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Wow.
So that was the original triangle. But when I unlocked that, it created so much freedom, because I was like, oh, this feeling of being punched in the stomach that something bad's going to happen with 3 women is actually just a reverberation of a very old thing I went through. There is no, and I actually talked to the 2 people about what was happening for me, and it was so healing, because they were like, oh my God, you're so safe. Like, we are both with you. We both care for you. Like, there's no up or down.
Like
and I was afraid of
their
this.
higher self, or is it 2 real people in life, or you talk to
2
your
real
mother?
people.
Okay, got it.
2 real people. So the trigger was 2 other women. So I was able to tell them about what I was experiencing, which was that there always has to be one on top, with 2 of them on top, and then me on the outside. And they were like, oh my God, that's so not what's happening right now. But we can see how you would actually see it that way, because you were boxed out and pushed down by your mother over and over and over again. So there was, in my mind, it was like, there was no way that everybody could be loved equally. That was something I've never actually experienced. So this was a really healing experience for me as an adult, was that I got to kind of re-experience the terror of that, and then also see that, oh, wow, that's not what's the case anymore. And be held in that kind of healing experience around it. But yeah, does this resonate with you guys?
Yes, it's insane. You don't lie. You see us I'm about to fall out of my chair. I actually haven't had a mind-blowing realization like that in a very long time. And we do this all the time. I really have not. That is such an interesting, and it's an interesting thing that you brought up, because I bet you could have gone a few different ways with that. And I think it's very powerful that you brought up the triangulation experience, because every single thing you've said, I felt in a very, 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 very real way. And it's interesting about, the hierarchy too. It's like, that's what happens. Like, you feel like there's a hierarchy. This is what I perceive when the love is conditional. And like, I feel like the triangulation happens when there's conditional love, when I'm being quiet, or I'm being good, or I'm being whatever it is. And, triangulation can't exist if like love is not conditional, because it's like always there. So yeah.
And the triangle is like such a strong shape.
Yes.
It's like very, very, I think maybe subconsciously I'm even identifying some triangulation with my dad, and where like it keeps him safe, to establish this triangulation, and it actually just like keeps our dynamic the way it's always been. And like his inner child is always showing up. But it makes me feel, like I can't change the dynamic, because that's what's always kept him just doing what he's been doing, and has kept me in a position to, kind of, I have to kind of think about it more, but like be what he needs, it's just kind of this really strong shape, and it's actually really hard to break it. But I'm obsessed with that explanation and that share.
Triangulation is really interesting, because it's something that people, I think, even unconsciously do sometimes as a manipulative, protective tactic for themselves, right? To not face or not be direct, or there's a lot of different ways it can play out. But it kind of keeps one person on the out, one person stuck in a certain way where they can't get out. So, but that's so great that you have a new insight around like that's what's happening there. Because with that knowledge, you can maybe make a new choice or do something differently, which your dad, who knows what will happen, but
who knows?
I know.
Who knows? I'm actually curious on like do men experience the mother wound, or is it more just like the father wound that's more prominent for them? Like what's that?
Yeah, men totally 100% have mother wounds with their mothers. For sure. It's just very different. Like it can be very different. Look, it's different for men. And again, it's kind of like that atmosphere of patriarchy that makes the way it play out a little different. Sure. Like, for example, some mothers, patriarchy has deprived them of that sense of self and sense of fullness. And so sometimes as mothers, their child, their son can play that role of making them feel valid. This is one way it could play out.
Yes.
So there can be an enmeshment with the mother and the son, and that can be very confining for the son as an adult and a child. Like, how do I'm going to hurt my mother if I be my full self. So it's like they can have a version of that as well.
Yeah.
But also if the mother is, sadistic or harmful or neglectful, there can just be plain old misogyny and anger and about, the rage that they have about their mothers. So there's a lot of things that men experience that they don't talk about, just like with us. So, I really think it's about people telling their stories and about feeling safe enough to talk about some of these things. And like we've established, this has been largely taboo for a long time to talk about our early relationships and how they played out and how they impact us now. But men for sure have a lot there that they suffer with and struggle with. But they are kind of have this also layer of don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Your feelings make you weak. And I think women, we feel strong. Like, I know a lot of us, I grew up feeling like you shouldn't talk about your feelings, but busted through that. Many of us have busted through that part, and are doing that brave work. But I hope that in the future years, men will start also sharing more of their stories with the mother wound as well, because they'll project it onto their, like, I was married to a man for a while, and like his mother wound, I became in the role of his mother. Like, he was treating me like the way, as though I was her in moments. And it was really tough because I'm like, this is not who I am. But also he was like, not even really aware of it. So it's in these romantic relationships that we can really make amazing headway if both partners are like kind of on the path of wanting to heal and wanting to support one another. That's when it can get really fun and juicy and intimate and real,
Wow.
I'm so grateful.
I know. I can't. Honestly, my brain needs like a little bit to. I was thinking, I'm like, we're going to have her on again because there's so much more I want to talk about in the book. And, but I need some I need a little bit of integration time with all of this. It's been
True.
unreal. It's
Thank
just,
you, Bethany.
Yeah, thank you so much. And also too, like, I know the book is super popular and you're just doing so well, but I've been intuitively thinking, I'm like, there's a timing for things. And I really think that like your time has been, but almost more so is going to be coming. Like, I feel like people really need to come to a place where they understand this. And once I saw in the linchpin thing was like it for me, I was like, whoa, this is like it. So
yes,
that's me just, telling you how I feel about the book and the work. This has been so amazing. So can you tell us, our community, where they can connect with you and learn a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. And I just want to say too, I have loved this conversation so much. And I love how you guys have like gone with me, to the depths here. So thank you for that.
It's not going to be your first and last. You're going to be coming back. So.
Yes.
I can't wait. But yeah, if you want to find out more, just go to bethanywebster.com. That's where everything lives. There's a blog with dozens of articles. There's a free ebook. I teach a course. So there's a lot of great stuff there to check out. You can spend hours and hours over there.
Beautiful.
Amazing.
And the book is Discovering the Inner Mother, for people that are on Amazon right now and wanting to order the book. I know that they are, but thank you, Bethany. That was really, really special. I feel like, to echo Krista, like, we have a lot of incredible conversations, but it's rare that we're just like,
I know,
I'm bringing this to therapy at 5 p.m. in 2 hours. So
I'd love to have in the membership or something. Cool. You're doing a workshop in the membership. We'll be talking. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Your work has been so profound and this was so lovely. So thank you so much, Bethany.
Thank you so much. I love you guys. This has been so fun, and I look forward to being in touch.
Same.
Perfect.
We'll talk to you later.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Have a great night. Bye.
You too. Bye.